is there anything that you can recognize that is something that really inspired or that you drew inspiration? I know from many things, but there's something or even a scene from something that you say, this really triggers something in me that connects to the last of us, right?
What comes to mind is maybe because we're talking about it, but just knowing how many sacrifices my parents made for me and my brother, and didn't always do the right thing, but they always try to do the right thing, and sometimes in trying to do the right thing, you hurt people, you do something bad.
Absolutely.
But a lot of those concepts, like these values that my parents instilled in me, and how I view this connection between family, and this idea that you have to do everything possible to protect your kids, anything at all. And that comes with a lot of fear. I think sometimes that's very much, love can create this intense fear. And I think my parents were often fearful of anything bad that might happen to me and my brother, and then took major steps, sometimes moving countries, to try to protect us. And when there was a time to work on a zombie story in school, my inspiration for that, like how do I approach the story, was those feelings I had about family. Because to me, they were like that genre and family dynamics and the idea of tribe and connection are very much interlinked.
Correct. And do you think that perhaps a feeling of love can be surpassed by the pain that loss causes?
I don't know if they're separate, right? Because to feel pain, you have to love. And I think it's right. It's this.
And also, love probably is the only way out of pain.
That's a great point. It's like I think grieving is a form of like letting go of love, or just maybe rechanneling it to something different. And I think sometimes people struggle with that. And you're right. It's like the way out of kind of the grieving is to find a love for something else. It's to move beyond this one love that is like has disappeared or is no longer there.
Yeah, or find whatever that thing. I mean, the love that was, find the transcendence stuff that love has, which is, I think, is fabulous, which can take you through pain. But that was a question that somebody sent. It's a good question.
It's a great question, and it's like there's no easy answer to that.
There's no easy answer, right? How was the difference from in Joel from Troy to Pedro? What is one Joel and what is the other Joel? Right?
As you know, often a piece of art, its DNA are like the people that work on it. Because they give something of themselves into it. So when you like switch a person out with someone else, the DNA of the thing is going to change.
Yes.
So when you ask me like the difference between Joels, like, well, the first Joel I knew was the Joel on the page, which was one version of Joel, right? The Joel kind of in my mind when I wrote those scenes.
Correct.
Then when Troy took those pages and interpreted them, and we like were on the set, I saw a different Joel. It wasn't the Joel that I had on the page. And being a first-time director, I wasn't sure how to deal with that. I'm like, do I try to bring him back to what was on the page? Or do I surrender to this other artist interpreting the art, and he's bringing something different, but not worse, it's just different. And it was really a moment of growth as far as like a director that what happened was like I surrendered to it, which was like, this is the person I cast. He sees this Joel in this different way. What if I lean into that version of Joel? And the moment was when he says goodbye to Tess. And on the page, he was much more stoic and he buried his emotions more. And the way Troy played him is like as if he's trying to bury his emotions, but they're bubbling out. And it felt more fascinating in its messiness. And then jumping ahead is like, okay, so then that Joel evolved and the game came out. And then it was going back to the page, but this time with a writing partner, with Craig.
Yes.
So now there's like a little bit of like, what I let go a little bit of control when, when I brought Troy in, and I had to do something similar when I'm bringing Craig in, let go of that control, and he's bringing his own interpretation of this character, so the character is evolving, and then we're bringing, and then Pedro,
and then he brings.
So then it evolved, and it's like you see a Joel that in some ways is more vulnerable, maybe is more tortured than the Joel in the game, and again, it's hard to say. Because he's more vulnerable, I think he's letting more of his fears come to the surface in the way that game Joel did not allow. So to me, it's almost like a psychological study. It's like, oh, this gives you more insight, not just to this Joel, but also this other Joel as well.
Correct. No, that's true. That's true. And yet, I mean, Troy also felt that the relationship with Tess should be a more loving connection with Tess, that at the beginning it wasn't like that, right?
It was always meant to be like hint that there was a romantic connection there, but that he kept her at arm's length and wouldn't want to invest too much in this love because of the loss he's experienced early in his life. So he's always keeping people at arm's length. And what Troy did that was really beautiful was to show he's trying to do that, but really it's never that. Any person that he connects with, he like fully connects and invests them. It's like that became his purpose. That was his way out of grief, was to invest in Tommy and Tess. And then once Tess was gone, all that's left is this 14-year-old kid.
Yeah, and Tommy somehow, that longing for his brother. But I remember at the time that I said, well, but are you going to direct this thing and stuff? And you said, no, I'm a video game director. I don't, I'm not going to do this because, and I thought, well, how cool, that he respects these things. But at the same time, I mean, you're a storyteller, you're telling a story and
because I remember you saying, you have to direct it. Like,
of course, I was sure that you could direct it, but at the time you were very, very hesitant about the idea of stuff. And I know that now you have directed.
I have directed
so
an episode.
I wanted to know how was that experience. I mean, what decided you to do it, and how was the experience to you?